Hey, welcome to another episode of Project 222, where we are absolutely investing in the college athlete who is trying to balance faith, sports, academics, relationships, and we know the struggles that go with that. So I think it's a worthwhile story to tell people story who have done it before and who have traveled this journey. And we've picked ex-college athletes who, man, they have great experiences and perspective and are here for you to to give you some practical tools to walk your faith out in the college environment. And we have none other than Connor Combs today, who graduated from East Texas Baptist University. So he's got his degree in business administration and accounting, also got a master's degree, played 4 years of baseball at a high level at ETBU, and has some really significant list of accomplishments that I'm going to read here shortly. He became the only player, only the second player in NCAA history to be named Academic All American of the Year twice, which is incredible. He stays involved with baseball and is around the game a lot. He's coaching 16, 17-year olds up in Dallas, Texas in the summer. Coaches the Dallas Patriots. Let me read a couple of his. Man, the list goes on and on for his accomplishments in athletics, but sportsman. So ASC is the conference that they played in. So he's ASC Sportsmanship Athlete of the Year 2017. D3 baseball, All West Region First Team 2017. The Division Three Hero of the Year for 2017, incredible. So academic All-American, I mentioned. He was the ASC Player of the Year in 2016 and 2017. Um, All ASC First Team in those years. Like I said, Sportsmanship Athlete of the Year. Man, this guy did it all pretty much when it came to academics and sports accomplishments in the game of baseball. Um, so he started after baseball. He started his career in wealth management, worked at Archetype Wealth Partners, and served as a wealth advisor for 3 years. And he focuses on serving athletes and children. But Connor lives in Dallas. He actually is a business owner now, and I'm going to let him kind of go into some of that here in a second. But lives in Dallas, relatively newly married as of 2019. Serves on the board of Life Pact, which is an organization who serves at-risk youth and teen moms. So I want to formally, on behalf of our audience, welcome Connor Combs to our show.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here and thankful for all that you're doing to serve guys that were in my position just a few years ago. And so
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yeah, man. I mean, look at the that list of accomplishments. I mean, when you played was is pretty extraordinary. I mean, that's impressive to be able to do it and do it at a high level and maintain a high level of academics as well, man. Talk a little bit about your company right now, about what you do, and maybe anything else I left out on a personal level.
Yeah, man, we launched Combs Capital Partners in October of 2020. So decided to start a company in the middle of COVID. So that was pretty crazy, but glad we did it. My dad and I, who's my partner, prayed through just that decision last year and decided we really wanted to launch a firm wealth management company that helped individuals and families maximize the impact of their wealth. And so when we think about money and investment management, we obviously think about growing assets and um, helping people financially plan for the future and so on and so forth. But we really think that it goes much beyond that. We really want to look at wealth like God describes it as something that's been given to us, something that we want to use to impact others. And we view ourselves as stewards of the gifts and blessings that God's provided to us. And so, how can we best utilize the gifts that God's given us to grow and expand the kingdom? And so, this is just the area of business that God has called us to. And so, it's been so much fun getting to work alongside Dad and serve the individuals and families that we work with. But that's a little bit about what we do. And
Yeah.
yeah, excited to see where God takes it.
It's awesome. That's great, man. I mean, it takes courage. I think we all know that to start a business. But man, audience, I will say, this Project 222, if you're not familiar with it, comes right out of the Bible, and it's in Second Timothy 2:2, where we talk about, you know, take what I have taught you and teach it to other faithful men so that they can teach others also. So this is just there's a downstream investment going on here. Like we've got guys who have walked this road, pouring into other people, athletes who are walking it now, so that maybe someday they can pour into others. And Connor has walked it out as a Christian at a high level athletic um, level. And man, I just think I want to dive right into this, Connor, because I think there's a generation now, and you were even part of this, that there's so much information now, and there's so much going on, that so many distractions, temptations, just different things. And it's hard enough to be an athlete in school, but nowadays I bet, there's just so much extra that we don't know about. So, man, I want to start out by maybe talking about a couple of leaders or mentors that you kind of looked at going through this college journey as an athlete, that you kind of wanted to try to emulate down the road, and talk about their qualities that made them good mentors.
Yeah, no, I love that question. And, that's one of the things that God has just been so good with in my life, is just surrounding me with great people. Um, I'm a product of the environment that I grew up in, with great parents that fostered a faith in me and my brothers, and really kind of gave us the push in that direction, but obviously allowed us to make those decisions growing up, and then even into high school and college. Just the leaders that God has put in my life have really shaped who I am today. And that goes to, I mean, my FCA director in high school. Um, my Robert Barton was my FCA director up in out in East Texas. I played summer collegiate ball each summer, and with organizations with FCA and then Athletes in Action, and had just tremendous coaches and GMs there that really just cared about me as a person. I think in athletics, it's a challenge to find really people that care about you, and not so much people that just care about what you can do for them from an athletic standpoint. And so when you find the people in your life that really just want to pour into you because they view you as a child of God, that's huge. And there's a family out in East Texas that I also should mention, just the Scott family that took me in out in East Texas. There were a family that went to the church that we went to, a couple of me and my friends, and would host us for weekly dinners, and just loved us. I think that's the main thing, is it's not about finding the smartest or wisest um, people to try to seek mentorship from. It's just finding people that genuinely love and care about you. And I'm just so grateful for the people that God's put in my life that genuinely did just love me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm the good part of that again is watching those people and seeing them invest in you, and then you're starting to identify qualities that you want to kind of exemplify for other people. And it kind of gets a little bit lost on today's society, the just the love component in general. And kids in college are no different than a 5-year-old that needs that nurturing, that love. College kids are going through a lot, man. They just want somebody that cares about them, that isn't telling them to do something, and isn't necessarily coming down, but they want someone that's gonna like actually invest in them and care about what they're thinking, what they're going through. So I think that's huge, man. College coaches are usually really good. I'm glad you mentioned FCA. I do a lot of work with those guys here in Houston, and man, that ministry is just powerful, and it's doing a lot of great things. Man, what would you say? So now that we're kind of peeling back the layers on this college athlete, and what if we're trying to climb into their skin and just understand their daily lives? I mean, you firsthand know what that's like. So talk about maybe the biggest challenge you faced as a college athlete, and maybe something that you saw from afar that, man, that seems like a common theme. Maybe I didn't go through it, but I just saw a lot of guys dealing with some challenges. Can you talk about any of that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of or a few of the challenges that I've faced are probably going to be different than some of the challenges that listeners may have faced or may be facing. Um,
Mhm.
I went to a small Christian school out in East Texas, and um, the challenges that I faced there are probably going to look a little bit differently than maybe that
Mhm.
of a Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, or
Yeah.
somebody else at a big school who's just trying to walk the walk. But there's just different challenges there. So for me, and then also just the individual, like the individual is going to have different struggles and challenges just based on who God created you to be. And so
Right.
I know for me, like one of the biggest things, and this is still something I'm working on, is just the desire to please people, and to be loved and liked by people. Um, and that creates a whole host of problems, especially when you're growing and trying to figure out who you are as a person in college, and
Mhm.
sacrificing certain things in order to be the guy you think people want you to be. So that was certainly a challenge and continues to be so, even in the business world, as you're competing for business and things of that nature. And but also just at a small Christian school, I think one of the challenges that I ran into was the you were close to God in proximity because you heard the gospel a lot,
Mm.
whether it was in chapel or your coaches and teachers and all that were constantly talking about God and scripture and tying it all in. And so you could use that as an excuse to feel like you were doing what you needed to do in order to grow in your faith.
Yeah.
And so you felt like you were close to God in that, but you weren't really growing in your own faith and walk. And so that was a challenge for me, just out of the environment that I was in, as it was making sure, okay, just hearing it in chapel was not enough. I really needed to get in the Word, to be diligent about my prayer life. And then what was I doing in the relationships that God put around me? Was I really investing in my teammates, and or was I just kind of going with the flow? And just because I was at a Christian school, that was sufficient in my walk. And so those were, I think, two of the main challenges, was fighting um, that uh, that for me, just walking the chapel and doing that whole route and not
Right.
really diving into the Word, and then just the desire to be liked by people and not living in honor of
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Man, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, golly, that applies to everybody. I mean, when you think about it, and I know college athletes, who have been in the spotlight in high school for the most part, and so they're accustomed to that attention, and then getting to that next level, I think it even elevates even more for some people, and so that need. Right, that need to fulfill those expectations, to gain the acceptance, that need for just validation from people, rather than just kind of knowing internally who they are in Christ, and that never wavers, is a huge thing, and it's a difficult thing for them to probably wrap their brain around sometimes. I mean, whenever all that other stuff is in your face and people are pointing and clicking and swiping left and doing all this scrolling social
Right.
media, like it's easy to compare yourself and feel a little bit insecure in those moments. But I mean, what you said was a real mature way to look at that. But would you say that you always looked at it that way? Like growing, as you're coming in 19, 20-year-old college baseball player, obviously one of the better players in the conference in Texas. Like I feel like maybe what would you say is one of the hurdles that these guys need to probably get over, aside from getting in the Word and those things, making time? Like, what would you say to a guy that's listening right now that's like, man, I get what you're saying, Connor, but practically day in and day out, I find myself getting sucked back into that vacuum. What do you say to that guy?
Oh man, and I'll probably talk about this a little bit more later. But man, seek accountability. Get
Yeah.
get involved with a group of guys um, that know you, that fully know you. There's a saying at the church that I go to be 99% known is to be unknown. Um,
Nice.
and so if you're leaving out that 1% while in community with guys that you trust, then you're not really known. So the things that you're struggling with, you've got to share that, man. You've got to get it in the open and talk about it and work through it.
That's good.
And so seek accountability in that.
That's
And in
huge.
such a social media driven world, this is not going to stop. Like
Yeah.
the need to be liked, to be affirmed by the likes or whatever it is on social media, even in business and as you get out of college, that never stops. You're always going to have to please people in some form or fashion to have some sort of success. One of my business mentors had always told me, said, "Hey, one of the best things you can be in your line of business is just likable. People want to work with people they like, and so
Yeah.
there's got to be a balance, though, of okay, how do I be a likable person but not sacrifice the
Yeah.
truths of the word and what God has described about me. And then the other thing is we're also in a culture of that preaches and talks about this idea of self love all the time. Of
Right.
like
Right.
you got to love yourself. You got to love yourself. And I think that's great to a degree, but I also think it's not great if we don't understand who God says we are. If we try to figure out and love ourselves by creating this idea or um, this picture of what we think we should be like, we can get in a lot of trouble real quick. And
Yeah.
I think if we remind ourselves what God says about us, who God sees us as, that's the best version of self love that, that you can
Yeah.
have. And so those are
Absolutely.
some of the things that I think I would tell a college
That's
athlete in today's world.
Yep, that's good, man. And we are going to talk a little bit more down the line here about some just how we would pour into those guys. But man, I would say as you're talking, like it's all about almost not all about, but it's a lot about relationships and how we sort of are disciplined instead of defined by those. Like we can be disciplined in those qualities and attributes that help us be successful in relationships, but I don't we can't be defined by them. So when we talk about the word defined and defining moment, like maybe you could talk about a moment in college. Again, Connor Combs, the guy at ETBU baseball. Like if there was a picture of ETBU baseball, I'm guessing if I asked your coach, he would probably say, go talk to this guy. So you're the guy. So going up through that stage, like, was there a defining moment about you or your faith along those 4 years, man? Because I know it wasn't probably all smooth sailing, even though you won about every award in the book. I bet there were some challenges. So talk about maybe one of those aha moments of clarity that you might have had along the way.
Yeah, and when I talk about my story and really how God got a hold of my life, there was no really big aha moment of like radical change. I feel
Yeah.
like, I mentioned I grew up in a Christian
Yeah.
home and um, truth was spoken into my life at an early age, and by the grace of God, just I believed it, but I didn't necessarily know what it looked like to walk it out. And when talking about my story, I typically or I always point back to the summer after my freshman year at ETBU when I went up to Xenia, Ohio, and played summer ball for an
Yeah.
organization up there, Athletes in Action Campus Crusade, which is great. And we played a big league schedule for 2.5 months, so 60 games and 5 days of discipleship. And then when we weren't being discipled and playing baseball, it was serving in the community. And so it was a lot of Jesus and baseball all summer, which was perfect
Wow.
for me. But that was somewhat of a defining moment in my walk because I really got to witness for the first time, other than like my dad, other guys my age and mentors really walk the walk.
Yeah.
And I, I I witnessed what it looked like to be a Christian man. And so that was somewhat of a defining moment for me. Took that back to ETBU. My sophomore year, was voted as a team captain that year and um, put into a leadership role as a sophomore, and just ran with it. Man, we just had a great group of guys. We had a Bible study on the team that was started by another guy that I got to help lead, and that thing grew uh, like crazy. And we ended up expanding it to the entire school as time went on. And so just things like that that continued to um, that continue to come about just as a result of being faithful. And but I think in my walk, I think it's a lot of God just sharing bits of wisdom
Mhm.
in the season that I'm in. And so I just think about guys that he's put in my life, and even the last 2 weeks, I started going to a Bible study here in Dallas. That's Christian business guys, and talking about really like defining success. What does that look like in today's world? And the mentor that leads it, he just said, "Man, success in my eyes is uh, desperately holding on to Jesus with both hands. Like that's how I define success." And it's like, who says that, you know? Like, so just that piece of wisdom hit home with me, and it's God revealing those things all the time, and those are little defining moments in my life that I know I'll take with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, golly, it sounds to me like you well, two things stand out to me, and I hope whoever's listening gets this here, but two things stand out. So you surrounded yourself with great people along the way, and you were in those environments that allowed you to see what good looked like, and then try to follow in those footsteps. Not exactly, because it's obviously personalized, but the second thing I hear you say is owning your faith and taking ownership of those disciplines and responsibilities in relationship with Christ, even though you grew up your whole life in that, right? Having that poured into you. But until you actually wrap your arms around it and make it yours, like, it's a whole different ball game. So I think that's what I hear. Two things I hear you say, like maybe not those lightning bolt moments, right? But still just moments of revelation and clarity where you're like, okay, I get it. Or here's what I needed. I'm going to take this step. And so you incorporated those disciplines to your daily life based on the people you saw around you, and then based on owning your faith. I mean, that's, to me, in a nutshell, I think somebody listening is going to be able to grab onto that, and really that could be a game changer for somebody. So awesome points you made right there, man. So we kind of talked about this a little bit, and I think we got to say this first. I didn't say this at the beginning, but we keep referencing people in your life, and we keep going back to, besides my dad, but I had a good parent. My parents were. Let's talk about, you came from like the pedigree that, baseball pedigree, faith pedigree. Yes, you had your dad, Pat Combs, like you mentioned. You started this ex major league pitcher. Like, he wrote a book. Like, he is what good looks like when it comes to leadership and mentorship. So I can't not mention him on this show. But yeah, I think it's cool. You don't, a lot of people don't get the opportunity you've had to really build a business with your dad and have him walk alongside you the entire way of faith and athletics and now business. So I don't know. I just want to give a shout out to Pat Combs that's all I was trying to do here. But no, what a great, I'm thankful for his connection with you and I, putting us together. So I know we talked about one thing earlier when you were talking about, kind of what would you say to that guy, but let's pull Connor Combs out of right now, and let's rewind the tape. Let's rewind the life story tape. And now you're sitting down in front of you as a freshman coming in to college as an athlete. You're sitting across the table, and you can give one or two pieces of advice, maybe some potholes along the way that you're like, I didn't see these coming, so you better watch out. Like, so let's talk about that. I know you mentioned accountability earlier, but let's go a little bit beyond that and peel back some more layers of that.
Ooh, yeah, I would say I needed a lot more than one or two pieces of wisdom coming in
Sure.
at 18 years old, and trying to find myself and make an impact. You know, college is so much about decision making, and it's really the first time in your life that your decisions can have real consequences.
Mm.
You can't be bailed out by your school or your parents or whatever. It's up to you at that point. And so I would tell myself, for first and foremost, man, understand your purpose, like who you are and what do you want to be. And so I'm big about a purpose statement, like build a statement for your life. And so for me, my purpose statement is I want to live and die and go to heaven and bring as many people as I can with me. And
Mm.
so every decision that I make should be filtered through whether or not it accomplishes what I view as my purpose. And
Yeah.
so the first thing I would say is, man, understand your purpose. Um, then I would say, live in adoration of God's goodness. Um, Man, that just
It's good.
produces a life of humility, of understanding, man, like God sent his son to die for me. And I get to live in honor of that. And I get to see and witness his goodness played out each and every day. And so live in adoration of his goodness. And then, yeah, the accountability is a big one. Get involved in a group of guys that you love and trust,
Yeah.
you can just do life with.
Yeah.
Um, and then just from a leadership standpoint, I'd say like earn your seat at the table.
Mm.
Be in a position to speak truth into people's lives because you've earned their respect and trust. And you do that by, especially as an athlete, you work your tail off. You be the first guy in, the last guy out. Yeah, and naturally, guys look up to guys that perform well. But that weekend where you're 0 for 8 and it didn't go so well, if that's what you're relying on to earn respect to get of guys, then it's not going to get you very far. So,
No, and in
and
baseball that happens a lot.
oh
So
yeah, man,
yeah,
I had an 0 for 10 weekend my freshman year,
yeah,
and that stung. So,
yeah.
yeah,
How you
it's not
respond to those moments too, as people are looking at as well.
responding to
How you
after the weekend.
respond to an 0 for 10. Yeah, I mean, the people watching that too, because that can speak volumes as well as being 8 for 10. So,
Yeah,
I mean, how
yeah,
you react, right?
absolutely. I mean, thankfully that weekend we got crushed by Concordia, so I don't think I was the only one that went 0 for 10. But yeah, how you respond to just trials is huge, man. And you earn respect that way when you can bounce back from a crummy weekend at the plate, or
Mm-hmm.
things are just going on in life that happen and people know about,
Yeah,
and you overcome. And yeah, that's probably the biggest way to earn people's respect, is you just overcome.
that's
And
good.
so and when you earn your seat at the table and get to share with people, there's just a curiosity that people um, have when they see you have success, and
Right.
your life is, and it's not put together in that you're living a perfect life, but you've got a sense of joy and peace about you that people are curious about, and then you get to share that when that respect is earned. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the next thing. And then lastly, just have an eternal perspective. We can get so caught up in the little things here on earth, and
Yeah.
especially in the business that I'm in. That's huge, man. Just think about what God has in store for you. Store your treasures up in heaven, and do your best to live a life that honors God, and thinks about the eternal instead of what's here today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's one of those easier said than done things, especially at a
Oh
college
yeah,
age, as you're maturing mentally and spiritually. Like, it's hard not to just make determinations and decisions based on the natural because of the things you see. And we're so stimulated by five senses that we have. And so, yeah, it's hard, but I would say that's another aspect of get somebody around you that's traveled that path and develop a good mentor, because they can kind of let you know, look, I know it's hard, but here, this is what we do. And those are some big time advice right there, big time wisdom that you came with right there. 'Cause I mean, those are, when you said the humility component and the adoration, like, of what God did for you. I tell people all the time, and I lead, I teach and at church and different things and lead teams. And man, if I could pick two things that are just gold to hold on to throughout your whole Christian walk, it's humility and gratitude. If I had to limit it to two things, like, I feel like if you can grab a hold of those two things and walk those out, humility and gratitude, there's so much peace that comes with that, so much joy, so much gravity from other people to you. Like, there's a magnetism that will be just evident when people look at you and they're like, man, you're grateful. You have an opportunity here to be irritated, but you're still grateful. Or man, you really did well, and you're still grounded, like you're still humble. Like what's going on with you? So that's the deal. We want to kind of provoke curiosity. People, we want people to draw to us, and those are awesome that you mentioned. Man, as we finish this out, like we could actually, court adjourned right now if we wanted to, because of how much goodness that was on this episode. But I want to finish with this. I want to have you complete a sentence for me. You, I know I made an impact in the lives of my teammates because. How do you know?
I love that. I and I want to start off by answering that with just the truth that my life is a product of God's grace in so many ways. Um, you know, I'm a miracle of Jesus because of, despite my flesh and my natural desires, I'm sitting here today fully confident in the fact that I know I made a difference in people's lives that I
Yeah.
played with, and one I they've told me. I get to have conversations with guys still today that I'm walking through life with, and I get to see text messages come through about just the way that I've lived. And when I say that, when the way that I've lived, again, I just want to point back to it's the grace of God that I've had the kind of impact that I've had, that I've gotten to have. Um, and so I think there's just so many routes I could have gone, that I know my flesh wanted to go,
Yeah.
and God gave me the strength to walk down the straight and narrow more times than not, and that's given me an opportunity to speak truth in life into a lot of my teammates and friends' lives. And so um, I know that I made an impact because they've told me, and that's the coolest feeling, is that
Yeah.
you get to share and um, just see guys grow. And man, there's two guys in particular that I'm thinking about right now that I wasn't as close to, but it was actually my older brother that has really made an impact on their life. And we're going to church on Tuesday nights right now, and I've gotten to see them just radically. I never really got to see like a radical transformation like take place right in front of me with people's lives. And these two guys in particular, it is so cool to see their they're just enamored with God right now. They
Yeah.
just came to know Christ, and it was that transformation, and they're like that childlike faith that
Yeah. Yeah.
Scripture talks about. It's like they are just so on fire right now, and it's so cool to see when people come to know
It's good.
Jesus. And so I know I went a little bit of a roundabout way there, but I think that's how I'd answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I mean, because they told you. I mean, there's no better way. There's no more direct line of communication or confirmation than that. And man, it can't feel, it's got to feel tremendous to just know that it was all worth it. And I think that's the message to the athlete today is there's going to be days where it doesn't feel worth it. There's going to be those mornings you wake up, your body feels like it's been through a meat grinder. You've got a test that day, maybe two tomorrow. You're dealing with a relationship issue. Maybe you just went 0 for 8, in that weekend, or whatever sport you're in. Maybe you didn't succeed at a high level in that moment. There's going to be those days where it feels like it's not worth it. And I'm
Yeah, there's gonna
telling
be
you,
moments too
oh, yeah,
where you feel like you're missing out, and
true,
I promise you, man, you're not missing out.
true, true.
God is better. I can
Yeah.
promise you.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of those moments that are just fleeting in those temporary, moments of gratification. Like there's a bigger picture, like you said earlier. So, I mean, those are awesome. That's an awesome testimony. That's an awesome advice that you've given. The wisdom. I feel like God was all over this because He gave you something for somebody else to hear, and I think somebody needs it. But it is worthwhile. Just so you know, when you feel like it's not, there is a long game here. There is life after college sports. There is a faith that's unwavering that never doesn't have a shelf life on it. So fast forward, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, when you're done with your college athletics, and Connor's a living proof that those people will remember you. people are always watching, and those relationships go beyond the lines of your sport, the field that you play on today. So Connor, man, on behalf of the audience, dude, this was gold. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for what you're doing. Tell people where they can find you, maybe if they want to reach out and in a business standpoint and get some advice along those lines too, because you've obviously got some wisdom behind you. So talk about your website or your business right now so they can find you.
Yeah, no, I'm on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever form of social media you desire. I'm not on TikTok,
There you
but
go. Good for
we've got
you.
our website is www.combscp.com. And my email is just my name, and Connors with an E. So no
Okay.
OR, it's ER, CONNER at combscp.com is my email.
Okay.
And then, yeah, we're on Instagram. And so
Good
that's
deal.
probably the form of social media I use the most.
Good deal. Well, hey, thank you again on behalf of the audience. And audience, look, I'm talking to college athletes right now that are in the moment. You're learning from people who have been there. You're learning from those who have proven it can be done. You can be a Christian in those hostile environments sometimes, in the environments that may be pulling at you in a way that maybe doesn't reflect your faith. You can stay the course. So I appreciate you tuning in. Hope you got some notes. Till next time, be blessed.